Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to Synchronicity Web TV. I am your host, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. Well, I'm so excited to celebrate with you today, Jill Loftis of Nuit Astrology. Now, you've seen her on my channel a whole bunch of times. I love her so much, and I love her astrology. In fact, when I need somebody to fill in for me, she's like right at the top of that list. Like, she's somebody I want to go to because I know that she's going to present astrology from that space of love and wisdom that I love so much. And of course, since you know how much I adore Jill, Jill is back at Synchronicity University. And as this is publishing, you've got just a few days left to choose your tuition rate. As always, just $5 a class to learn from Jill and these other incredible astrologers. Jill, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Nadiya. Always an honor to spend time with you.
It's always amazing. It's true. And I'm just so proud of you. I've watched you over the last years just blossom and share. And it's just been such a joy to watch, and very proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunities, and you are totally an inspiration. Absolutely.
Oh. So tell me, you're in Portugal. How's it going? And how's astrology in Portugal?
You know, it's very interesting for me personally. It shifts my chart so that my Uranus-Pluto conjunction is at my midheaven. And so it's very interesting to feel the shifts. You know, you're quite the traveler. And as we move through these different time zones, we really experience the energies in such different ways. So yeah, just really kind of growing into it.
Yeah, the relocation astrology, right? I just got done teaching this whole course about astrology and travel. And so I really had a chance to delve into, like, remind myself what it is I already know, which is part of what I love about teaching. And I think that you feel the same way as well. But yeah, it's amazing how it is that depending on where we are, it's like a different part of us comes forward. So to have a place where Uranus-Pluto conjunction comes forward, ooh, Jill, that's pretty intense, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, we'll see. It takes it out of my 12th house and puts it in a more public realm. So I don't know. I think with any relocation astrology, you always are looking at one thing where it's like, oh, wow, this is wonderful. And something else is like, oh, well, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me about your upcoming class. Let's start there. Talk to me about this. Why did you choose the topic? Why do you love it?
I chose astrology and karma because I feel like that's one of the primary uses of the astrological chart. It's something that has really helped me personally to, instead of thinking that I'd made errors in life, that things had not gone well were just because I made bad decisions or things like that. Instead, looking at it in a more cosmic sense of the journey of the soul, of the evolution, the learning of this blueprint of our karma and the gifts and talents we bless ourselves with, and the challenges that we choose to experience, so that those experiences build within us strengths so that we can meet the challenges that come later. And it completely transformed my life personally. And so that's part of why I got into astrology, because it's one of the most magnificent ways to really begin to understand ourselves. And if we can understand ourselves, you can create the life of your dreams.
How do you define karma?
I define karma as the law of cause and effect. Whatsoever we do, say, or think, we get to experience, because we need to understand the repercussions of our choices. And I think way too many people think that karma is about retribution or punishment, when it isn't. It's an impersonal law, just like gravity. And so when you knock the glass over and it falls on the floor, it's not because you're a bad person. It's not because the glass doesn't like you. It's just gravity. And so once you understand the laws of karma, you can begin to work with the patterns in your life. I mean, it's one of the great blessings of getting older. Not only do only the lucky ones get to age, we get to experience these transits, and the patterns, and identify them, and then work with them. Not unlike, I mean, I'm not a surfer. Are you a surfer? Have you ever gone
No,
surfing?
not yet.
So
Who knows what tomorrow will bring? Yeah.
imagine it's very similar to that, in that you have to anticipate what's coming, not in a fearful way, but in a way that you can ride that wave instead of just standing in front of it in trepidation or fear, or try to escape it. It's coming. So work with it so that you can get somewhere that you want to be.
It's interesting because just before we started recording, I was telling you about how much of a night person I am. And you said, "Oh, you should be in Brazil." And you might know this, perhaps, but I actually have spent a lot of time in Brazil. So there was this 18-month period where I must have spent a total of 8 months in Brazil altogether, 8 months over the course of about a year and a half. And yeah, it is very much a go, go, go nighttime place, which I enjoyed very much at the time. Now, you talked about surfing, and I will tell you, because surfing is huge there. And I used to like to go to this part of the beach. It was like sort of between Copacabana and Ipanema. It's called Aproador. And there is like the prime surfing spot. There's tons of surfers there. And the thing is, I was scared to like get up on the board and do that whole thing. So what I would do is I would just sort of put myself in the water and just to hope they wouldn't hit me, and just sort of try to keep an eye out, because they'd be like next to each other. But I know a lot about the waves. That's the thing. I really learned so much about myself, about the ocean, by just riding the wave. And I would just let myself bop up and down, and it was so incredible. And so it's incredible that you use that visual to help us to understand, because I think when you describe karma, I'm also thinking about the deeper spiritual lessons that are always playing out in our lives, and breaking free of karma. There's a few ways to do that, right? The Buddha said is to understand our essential nature, but also self-knowledge. I think self-knowledge is a big part of what helps us to break karmic cycles, generational cycles, even our unconscious patterns, which could be seen as karmic as well. It's powerful to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think a lot of generational karma. It's important to look at that, but even just the patterns that we perpetuate, we have to understand so that we can have that little pause so that we can make a different choice, and pivot from this idea that life happens to us, and understand our own empowerment and our role, and the role of free will. And astrology helps so much with that, because even just how close the conjunctions are, or even just looking at, are most of the planets in the top part of your chart or the lower part of your chart. And it's important, I think, for people to understand they don't have to become astrologers. Astrology is another language, but they also don't have to depend upon astrologers. They can learn and understand and integrate some of this knowledge so that they can make these choices for themselves. And that's when the real magic starts, I think.
Oh, I love that. I love that because, yeah, I am very much of the belief that this is a skill and anybody can learn this skill. And for me personally, I do think that, yeah, there is a sense of maybe, calling on the ancestors, bringing their wisdom forward into this incarnation. There's a sense of calling on your past lives, right? Sort of getting out of the way and letting the wisdom come forward that represents experiences and knowledge your soul already has going back lifetimes. But there's also something really powerful about knowing that you put in the time to learn something properly and that you did it. You put in the time to do it properly as well. I mean, as we mentioned earlier, I'm a Sag moon, but I have two planets in Capricorn and Saturn in the first house. Now, the Saturn in the first house, Capricorn planets, that's about really putting in the time. I'm totally okay with that. But the Sag moon is used to jumping in head first. I've done that way too many times where I've just jumped in and been like, yes, let's do this, let's go. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, darn, I should have prepared a little bit more. Maybe I should have done a little bit more. And so it's interesting to see how even that can be rooted in all kinds of complex, very deeply rooted patterns as well.
Yes, and just to even just know those basic little pieces of information. I mean, having Saturn in the first house, I mean, you are going to want to accomplish things. And so there should be no guilt about that. There should be no, oh, well, I'm always working. Well, I enjoy my work. I enjoy being productive, right? Also, the Sagittarius moon, I want to have these experiences. And then part of the wisdom of getting older is I don't need to have them all.
Today, anyways. Yeah. That really is it. I don't need to have them all today, but that doesn't mean I don't need to have them all. It's true. Because even like I had promised myself I'd go to 50 countries before I turned 50, and I did it, right? And that was a great a thing. It was like quite the elation to have achieved that. But then, I think later the same day, I was like, but I haven't gone to Easter Island yet. And okay, this summer I was in Mexico City when I was already talking to the landlord about coming back to Mexico City. And even while I'm doing that in the back of my head, I'm like, do you want to come back to Mexico City or do you want to go to Easter Island? Like, how are you going to swing? Like, then when are you going to get to Easter Island? Right? Like all this stuff. So it's so fascinating to see. It's restless, right? The Sag moon is so restless.
But to know that about yourself, then let's say someone doesn't understand that, and you can feel confident about it. It's just an essential part of your nature, and so you work with it.
That's amazing. That's so true. Like really understanding the moon, lunar energy. It's such an essential part of the nature, but it's also like your default, isn't it?
Yes, and often we're more in our moon sign as children as well, and so we can kind of watch the evolution. We go from our moon sign and we step more into our sun sign, and then I feel like we really embrace our rising sign later in life too.
Oh, wow. That is so true because I have a rising sign in Cancer, and dear goodness, I have cursed the heavens quite literally for that because the Sag moon, the Aquarius sun is like, I don't care about anything and I'm going to go out. But then the Cancer rising is like, my feelings, my feelings. And then the rest of me is like, darn your feelings. Ah, so I get it totally, right? Now,
Yeah.
can I ask you, because you said a few interesting things and I want to go back to them because I know as much as we have fun together, and I know we can just talk like this and just get together like girls as we are right now. But I also know that you are a brilliant astrologer. And so I want to ask you a couple of questions based on some things that we've already been talking about. So one is, you mentioned something about how just looking at the chart, the bottom half and the top half can tell you something about karma. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, in kind of a basic level, when you divide the chart into as above, so below, those lower houses, I feel like for most people, those are transformations that occur for internally, and then they reflect out in the outer world, versus someone whose chart is loaded on the top part, where they're always reacting to other people and situations and things that are happening more to them in the exterior world, the more public realm. So I think this is somewhat helpful as well, especially in times like this where we have so many planets clustered in, just a few signs. So if that's happening in the lower part of your chart by transit even, you can understand that these are causing internal changes versus up in the upper part of the chart where it's just more of a public experience. I just think it's just kind of a more simple level to kind of look at it and think, oh wow, yeah, I change, because change can happen either way, right? Either we react internally and then that changes the outer world, or the outer changes and then we change the inner.
Wow. And it's so intuitive to understand the chart that way, isn't it? Because that axis of the ascendant, descendant, that at the moment of birth is the surface of the earth. So it's literally like what's in the bottom half was under the earth at the moment of your first breath, and everything above is what was in the heavens, in the sky at the moment of your first breath. It's fascinating to consider. And, based on how you explained it, I would also think, and this, of course, makes astrological sense, the closer something is to the midheaven, which is the highest, the zenith of the zodiac when you're born, the more likely it is to be public. But public is relative, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Just because you have something conjunct your midheaven doesn't mean you're going to get your own TED talk, but it does mean that you have a certain drive to have a legacy, to leave something meaningful behind. And that doesn't necessarily mean quantity of people. It means quality of the life, I think.
Wow. And so while we're on that, let me ask you, because I'm sure people are going to be thinking, well, okay, if that's the bottom half and the top half, then what is the right? What is the left, right? What is the east half? What is the west half? So how about you just, give us some insights into understanding those halves of the chart as well?
Yeah, so I love to think of it as above, so below, within, so without, and so I feel like that the side of the chart that includes your ascendant, that is more changes that you are making individually, and then the other half of the chart is more how you are relating with others. You are having children or creating a business or working at a job or coming into a partnership or merging your finances or learning from others. And then some of those other parts, the 10th house, how are you going to feel like you're successful? That's very individual. What are your goals? What are your dreams? What are your hangups? 12th house, right? Who are you physically? What do you value? Second house. And how do you communicate? So I feel like that's how I look at those divisions.
And I love that you said what success is so relative, right? It really depends on the person. And, based on what you were just sharing, I was thinking what it is to be yourself is different depending on the person. What it is to have a relationship and what kind of relationships you want, what you deem as a good relationship or not, the it is the western half of the chart with the descendant that can tell us so much about that and all kinds of relationships, right? It's fascinating to consider how just that it is just so intuitive and it just makes this instinctual sense. But as you were sharing, I was also thinking about it from a karmic perspective, because from a karmic perspective, if you've got a chart that's got lots of energy clustered around the ascendant, well, chances are karmically, this is a life where you are wanting to focus on yourself or something of yourself or defining yourself, right? But when you've got a chart with lots of energy near the descendant in the western half of the chart, well, so much of your karma is going to play out with other people in this lifetime.
Absolutely. And I think that that's it's important to kind of understand that. It's especially important to understand it when transits come through. It's one thing to have the natal and understand that as a basic level, but then when transits sweep through those, sometimes all of a sudden you're more internal or you're more focused on yourself or you're shifting the way that you have been in relationship. It can really transform. Um, especially with the slow moving planets, they don't hit everybody's entire chart, right? You have Pluto go across the descendant. Not everyone experiences that, but you are going to go through some major transformations in your relationships that will reflect across the sky to you. So, yeah, it's fascinating. Astrology is endlessly fascinating.
Right. I always say one lifetime isn't enough to know all there is to know because really there's so much. And like recently, I started learning about the anti vertex. So there's the vertex and the anti vertex. And the vertex, for those students of astrology out there, it's like this electric point in the chart. And it can be very karmic. And it's like events will happen or you'll meet people who pull you into a vortex, like they pull you into this whole other world or reality or understanding of self. And it can leave you changed sometimes forever. But the anti vertex is the stuff that comes from within you. the stuff that arises, the stuff that you actually feel propelled to change, to shake up. It's not about it coming from some external stimuli, some person, place, thing, or situation. It's about you, your own. Sometimes it's antsiness, sometimes it's creative vision, sometimes it's desire, but it's really your own sense of your own power and where you are meant to go in this lifetime that wakes right up. And I'm really excited about experimenting with that more, because I imagine when you look at the vertex and the anti-vertex, I'm used to using the vertex, and a big planet conjunct that, well, that can awaken some karmic move forward. But sometimes that karma is with ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes, yeah, it's sometimes karma awakens within us, not unlike the pine tree with the pine cones that only opens in certain circumstances, right? There's a fire or the heat. Karma is very much like that. And so something triggers it, but it can be an internal shift or trigger or response, or external. And so, yes, I also work with the vertex. Hadn't paid a lot of attention to it until once I was looking at it in my daughter's chart. And it said, you will live in a country not of your birth. And she was drawn to go to college in Scotland without ever having been there. So I was like, something to this vertex.
No, and you know what? My vertex is in Sag as well. There you go. Even more, like if you throw enough things in the chart, everybody's got a lot of everything. I know that, right? But because there's just so much out there that you can incorporate. But not just that, but there's also like my moon. It's in the sixth. It's near the descendant and all that, but it's in the sixth. And I remember my dear professor, the late great Jeffrey Cornelius. I was in one of his classes, and we were talking about one of the Arab astrologers, right? These medieval astrologers, and I forget the name. I wish I remembered it, because I'd love to pull that resource up now. But in this book, and Jeffrey was talking about how it said something like, this person will be exiled from their homeland. And I was amazed that I had this signature that they were talking about like 1,000 years ago, more now or so. But what was so fascinating to me was, like, I am South Asian, but South Asia, it's like one of the only places in the planet that I haven't been. That and Antarctica. I've been on every continent other than Antarctica, and I have yet to be in South Asia. And I have tried to go a whole bunch of times. Every time I've tried, something happens, something stops me. Some event, whether it's in my life or just on the world stage, happens, and it's just like, nope, you're not meant to go. And there have been times when I would say twice, I had the ticket, I had the plan, everything was supposed to happen. And then at the end, it was like, shoop, nope, you're not meant to go. And I also think about how, we're talking about karma and we focus on external events, which is powerful. But there's also the inner feeling, there's the inner sense. And, I remember this really came home to me back in, I think it was 2010, when we had an Olympics in Vancouver, Canada. And I remember watching the opening ceremonies, and they were telling something about the native tradition. And oh my God, did I start crying? Did I feel that so deeply, like it was my story, Like on a soul level, I feel so connected, which I know is the story of the Americas. Like people feel more connected to a land, not of their ancestors. But that's also how I feel about Mexico. That's the truth. Like ever since I first went there, I was like, oh my God, like everything, the stories, the smells, the colors, the music, the culture, the people, the faces, like everything was just like familiar. It woke something up in me. And I know that even karma can show us something about that as well.
Yeah, I think that internal prompting, I mean, that's part of all this whole process is learning to trust those things, right? Those urgings. And that's part of why astrology goes hand in hand with so many spiritual practices and spiritual traditions, because it is a wonderful tool in order to have the full and complete life that your soul desires. And so you do get feelings or promptings. Again, back to the wave. You think, oh, well, I need to book a flight, or I'm not sure why I'm going to do this, but I'm gonna, make that phone call, or I'm gonna check in with that friend, or these types of things that help the story unfold harmoniously. And the more that we pay attention and listen to the promptings of our charts, and our inner guides and inner intuition, the more we're prepared. I think that's often why people seek out advice and things like that, because they just are looking for external validation. But the chart is there to provide so many of it, so many of the understandings and validations of what we're feeling and experiencing.
Wow. Yes. The chart ultimately, it can be profoundly validating. It can really speak to truth. And I think that's what we're going for, truth in the experience of the client or the person that we are reading. And it's powerful to see how that truth can emerge at times. And in our own lives, right? We always start with our own charts. When we see it in our own charts, we start applying it to other charts. So let me ask you, because I know that you're in Portugal, and this is very exciting, and I'm so happy for you. Do you feel a karmic connection to Portugal?
I do. And it's interesting because it really wasn't on my radar before. But when you get somewhere and all of a sudden your soul feels like it can relax in some way, there's a sense of ease in a place. That's how I feel here. Um, I find myself even just, going to the market, and to buy vegetables, and having this profound sense of gratitude and gratefulness. And there's just something about it. I've felt that way in Scotland. I've felt that way in Peru. It's interesting how these different places kind of feed a certain part of your soul or yourself, and feel like home, even if you've never been there before, at least in this lifetime. So, yeah, I think trusting that is really important for all of us, because there is sometimes a sense, there's the old adage, right? Bloom where you're planted. But sometimes, you might be a cactus that's not thriving in the rainforest, and you need to empower yourself to think, it's a big world, and maybe someplace would be better.
And we are so fortunate that we can. It's never lost on me just how great fortune it is for something I didn't even earn, which is my passport. But there's just so much passport privilege traveling with a Canadian passport. And, I will also say, what you described, like where you feel and how you feel. To me, the way I describe it is there are certain places I go or have gone, and I just felt like I could breathe. I just felt like, oh, now I can breathe. And I feel that way in Vancouver. And I feel that way in Mexico as well. And so it's interesting. And in many spots around the world, yeah. And then there are places I've gone where I really don't feel that. Like I've gone and I expected it to be one thing. And I was like, no, I can't stay here. I got to go. I got to get myself out of here. And that too is a karmic prompt as well. Like on a soul level, where you are to be, but also where you're not to be is just as valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's part of the whole idea, again, of the chart and understanding the karmic patterns, so that you know where your tricky spots are. You understand where your triggers are. You understand the things that keep you from behaving in the best and highest manner for your own soul's evolution. Again, it's not punishment, it's an understanding. What am I trying to learn here? And sometimes what you're trying to learn is how to set boundaries, or how to extricate yourself from a situation and not repeat it.
Yeah. And I mean, I know we're focusing on travel. That's really because of me. That's really because I have my Sag moon and I'm all like, and it's in the sixth house. So it's like work, all of it comes together. But there's all kinds of ways. When you say where we are to be, that isn't just a literal place. It can be a figurative place. It can be a spiritual place. But, like my parents are not travel people at all, right? At all. And they love to be at home. They love to be rooted, and that's what's right for them. But that doesn't mean they're not engaging their karmic lessons, because really we all are, whether or not we are very, conscious of it or whatever. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I just want to ask you this. And it takes a bit of a turn here, but right now I'm having my Chiron return, and it's like another pass, if you will. And the thing is that I have had to, as part of this larger Chiron return that's been happening like on and off, because that's how transits work, since 2023, this idea of accepting that the world has a lot of pain, accepting that there's, like, one of my dear friends, and team members actually, he says to me, like, evil exists and love exists, and sometimes they need each other to know each other, in a sense, right? But I think I'm still sort of reconciling with it a little bit. There are certain things I'm trying not to think of, but you know how it is when you hear of a story and you don't even need to see it, but you hear it, and it just hurts so deep within to think of how we can be with each other. And I don't know. I don't know. Do you have any answers about that? What can we, I try to understand it karmically. I try to understand it from the perspective of, maybe that person who is creating extraordinary pain, really unforgivable pain, maybe, right?
Mhm.
There was somebody recently in the US. He was sentenced to 400 years in prison for his role in a dog fighting ring. Okay. Can you imagine? Like, I don't even want to imagine, but that hit something so deeply within me. Um, because so many people who were part of that said they just never even conceived that it could be this awful. Um, what do you think about that from a karmic perspective? Have you ever thought about that?
Oh,
What it could
yes.
mean? Yeah.
Quite often, and because a lot of people inquire about that, about, for example, how could an innocent child have the karma to suffer in the way that they can in this realm? And my perspective on that is that the soul doing the harm, the soul being evil, always has the opportunity not to fulfill that. Often I think that we do give ourselves in almost an offering of a karmic contract to give someone an opportunity to resist those waves of negativity that have been passed on from generation to generation. I do think it is absolutely vital and something that we should each feel very proud about if we're able to look at our lineage, our family, and understand that something that was perpetuated ended with us, that we did not carry it forward, that it's possible that we had those parents or those people were put in our lives to understand what not to do and to see that there is great suffering. It doesn't have to be. I
Hmm.
really do believe that this realm can be um, a beautiful realm, a peaceful realm. But we do have to, it comes back to this accountability and personal responsibility to see what is right and what is wrong and to continue to do what is right. We have to lift the vibration collectively. And part of that, understanding the chironic journey, is to feel rejected, to feel like you don't belong, right? Chiron was rejected by the other side. He was different. And in the same way that in the highest expression of the Aquarian age, our differences should be celebrated. It's the uniqueness of every piece of thread in the fabric that truly makes the fabric beautiful. Um, so yeah, I do believe that evil does exist in this realm, and it is up to us to call it out and to not make it socially acceptable. And that's where we're at in this time and space, unfortunately, and what we might call the Kali Yuga, as they talk about it in Hindu thought, this time, this dark era. Hopefully, we are in this process of lifting the vibration as these outer planets are shifting into these new signs. And frankly, as women are getting more empowered and can participate more in society, we have a different perspective. And I'm not saying women are better than men or anything like that, not at all. But we have a powerful role to play in lifting the vibration on the planet. And so part of our job right now is that we're midwives to the future, especially those of us who are either close to the Chiron return, past the Chiron return, or approaching it. It really does show for us that essential wound and whether we've done the work. And it's not it's not a judgment. It's a choice that we have to make. Do we feel like we're fulfilling that mission? Do we feel like we're coming to wholeness? And I think, especially with Chiron and Aries, it's about personal responsibility and maturity.
Wow. And empowerment, and yeah, all of those wonderful ways. I guess based on what you've just said, each Chiron sign has its own way of bringing forward, of manifesting, and being part of collective healing, because it can feel sometimes like it's just so big, especially when you're having your Chiron return. It can feel like, oh, the pain of the worlds are so big. But there is something, like my mom, she says to me, you can't save the world. You just do what you can, and you be loving to the people around you, respect people around you. And these become ways in which we can actually do something. We can't do everything, but we can do something. And maybe that's part of Chiron as well. Like, there are things we can do, but then there's also things that are just grace, right? The grace of the gods ultimately helped him to ascend and become a constellation. And that's it. It's that balance between faith and grace, but also like personal ownership for what you actually can heal, and accepting the limits of that.
Yes, and not trying to be perfect. There are no perfect humans. They're just perfect moments. But we have to acknowledge our light and our shadow, the easy and the difficult, and how sometimes they merge back and forth. It's not that simple. This is the realm of duality, and so the pendulum will always swing between,
Mm.
the up and the down, and the light and the dark, and the easy and the hard. And that is part of being here. It's part of understanding how it works.
And so many traditions, and we can see this astrologically as well. James Ennison, who I interviewed here and who's taught at the school before, I remember he was saying, if we were supposed to have peace, there wouldn't be a Mars, there wouldn't be a Pluto, right? And it's so true. Like, if it was just all meant to be harmony and roses, that's not necessarily the world we've co-created together. Our consciousness discovered these outer planets, these huge, overpowering symbols that can feel very karmic. I know that there are whole schools of astrology who look at karma just in the context of the outer planets. And so, we're here now, and maybe part of the karma is to be able to be sensitive and aware of that pain. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I would like to think it's an older soul that's willing to feel it. It's an older soul that's willing to feel it. Yeah. And once again, everybody, because I know, Jill, you're so generous with your time every time you're here. But yeah, Jill is coming back to Synchronicity University. As this publishes, you have a few days left to choose your tuition rate. As always, just $5 a class to really dive into astrology and karma that much more with the one and only Jill Loftis of Nuit Astrology. I'm so proud of you. I always love talking to you, Jill. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Nadiya. I appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you, everybody out there, for watching. Until we connect again, take care. Bye.